Hey there, this is Natalie, and I got a bit behind on the Arc 7 chapter summaries where I was working on that massive video debunking a certain other YouTuber's hot takes about ReZero and various other topics, and then replying to the comments. So I'm catching up today, and there's a chance chapter 19 might come out today too, and if it does, I'll try to cover that this evening. As another quick update before I get into the summary of the excellent Arc 7 Chapter 18, I'm going to start using more fan art in these Arc 7 videos, and in this one there'll be some art of Arc 7 scenes, which is by Pabo Bingu, and of characters like Kuna and Todd, which is by Perf, and their Twitter accounts are linked in the description, so if you're on Twitter and you're keeping up with Arc 7, give them a follow to see more. If you've done any Arc 7 fan art yourself that you wouldn't mind me using, then also please let me know. I've just realised I've never actually promoted my own Twitter in the videos, so yeah, you can also follow me at NatalieXHunter. There's also a very special bit of fan art of Todd and Jamal that Ice Cultist did, so see if you can spot that later in the video. So, on to the chapter, and this one is another banger, with the title being The Attack and Defense of the City, or as Google Translate for some reason called it, The Attack and Defense of the City of the City. The chapter begins with Subaru having realised that his enemy is Todd, and remembering the events where he lured Todd and the others to fight the snake. He knew that their lack of experience in seeing witch beasts would mean they would be likely to be killed, but he'd weighed up in his mind their lives against the things he wanted to protect, and he'd willingly taken that action. Now he realises that here, he must face the consequences of his actions then. Having returned by death to see Flop chatting the same lines as before, Subaru falls to his knees at the memory of Flop's handsome head being crushed. Kneeling, he says the name of the man he's now realised killed them all then, and will be trying to kill them again now, Todd. He realises too that he'd been stupid to ignore the possibility that there could have been survivors from the Sudrak assault on the Imperial army camp. This is the nearest city, and so it's no surprise that, like him, those survivors found their way here. He thinks about how it feels to call Todd his enemy. Since he came to this world, he's had many opponents, but they were all malevolent beings like witches and witch beasts. This is the first time he's created an enemy by his own actions. He bites the inside of his cheek, hoping the pain will help him focus, where his ears are ringing and his limbs are numb. Flop is worried about him and asks him if he needs some water. Subaru knows that time is moving forward while he's in this weak state, and that Todd will be preparing to attack. So despite not really being okay at all, he gets up and tells Flop he's alright, but also asks him if he would mind returning to the inn to get his medicine from Rem. Flop asks what's wrong with him, and Subaru says he needs medicine for his medical condition, which he makes up a name for, and which Google Translate says is called ankle shine. His aim in doing this is to split himself and Flop up, so that Todd will be forced to attack him and not follow Flop and harm him, or find out where Rem is. He plans to go to the tavern, join up with Rowan by himself, and then think of what to do next on the fly. He's also hoping that when Flop returns to the inn asking Rem for a medicine she knows nothing about for an unknown disease, she'll figure out that something has happened to Subaru and stop Flop returning to the scene. He says it's wishful thinking, but the best he can come up with right now. As he rushes to the tavern to try to enact his plan to hire Rowan though, he hears a sound from the alleyway. Looking down it, he sees that it's Flop, and he's been attacked with a knife to the leg. I'd have thought an arrow to the knee would be more fitting for Todd, but no, he's been badly wounded and is in a lot of pain. But as Subaru rushes to try to get him somewhere safe where he can be treated, he considers that it's lucky it's not likely to be a fatal wound. But then Subaru realises that it's strange that the person who caused the slaughter in the tavern would stop attacking Flop while he was still alive. It dawns on him that this is a common tactic used by snipers. Attack one person and leave them alive, then pick off those who come to help them. As he considers what a horrible tactic this is, using people's companionship against them, he sees a light glint in the alley and receives a dizzying blow to the forehead. As he reaches up to feel if there's blood, his arm takes another hit, and as he tries to cover the wound, where blood and muscle fibre are exposed with his other hand, he sees the proof that that hand has been hit too, and the fingers are pointing in all different directions. He knows his mistake was to try to help the fallen Flop, and with the loss and pain threatening to overwhelm him, he looks up at Todd, who is approaching him now, his face not covered this time. Subaru doesn't know what emotions show on his own face, whether it's pathetic begging or anger and hatred, but either way, Todd's response is cold, and he coolly runs his finger over the blade of the axe that just destroyed Subaru's arms. In an unemotional voice, Todd says, "You have to work harder, you have to fail." In just as cold a manner, he raises his axe, and Subaru can't speak, expecting death to come now. But before the axe can fall, Flop, fighting through the pain of his wounded leg, jumps at Todd and shouts to Subaru to run away. But Todd easily gets Flop off of him with an elbow strike, and immediately reacts to his interference by turning and killing Flop with an axe blow to the face. As the alley soaks in Flop's blood, Subaru, who due to the fear and horror and pain is not thinking clearly, manages to get out some words. He says that Todd has a grudge against him. He thinks about how it's natural that Todd would bear a grudge against him, but isn't it evil that he's killing other people? Killing Flop so brutally that he wouldn't even be able to show his body to his sister? But Todd replies that he doesn't have a grudge. He says that one doesn't kill a viper because of a grudge. One does it because it's scary. He wants to kill Subaru because he thinks he's dangerous. Subaru is stunned by this, as Todd picks the bits of skin and hair from Flop's crushed head off of his axe blade. He realises that this is why Todd is not emotional about killing Subaru. He's recognised him as dangerous and so wants to kill him. It's not revenge at all. As Subaru is kicked to the floor and waits for the strike that will kill him, he thinks about how in the past, the secret to his victory has always been to use return by death and find out what was going on behind the scenes that could save him. But unlike a Sin Archbishop, there's no trick here for him to discover. His opponent is a ruthless murderer. And there, Subaru dies once again. As he returns to the familiar dialogue from Flop, this time Subaru has no idea what to do. He's died 5 times in what he guesses to be about a 20-minute window. He compares it to the tower in Arc 6, and how there he had to die over 15 times in quick succession to find a solution. But as he was counting up those deaths, he felt like he was making progress, step by step. Here, he does not have that confidence. He thinks about his options. Subaru immediately acknowledges that there's no way he's willing to sacrifice Flop as a decoy. He thinks it's also reasonable to assume that Todd doesn't currently know where Rem is, because he's never attempted to use her to lure Subaru. This means he can't go back to the inn, as it will lead Todd there. They don't have the option of going onto the main street, because even if they can avoid the dragon car that killed them once before, it will end up involving innocent people. Taking any other path puts him in an alley that's like a hunting ground for Todd, where Subaru and Flop have inferior combat strength. He still thinks that the only option that has any hope of succeeding is to go to the tavern, though he's not really sure how strong Rowan actually is. As Flop asks Subaru if he's okay, and he curses the fact that his own disturbed behaviour is making Flop suspicious, he has a sudden realisation. He thinks about what Todd's preconceptions of him are. As the idea hits him, he shouts loudly, "Todd, I know you're watching me." Flop is surprised, but Subaru is banking on the fact that Todd should be surprised too. He tries to adjust his demeanour to look as dangerous as possible, remembering what Todd said. He doesn't have a grudge against Subaru, he just thinks he's dangerous. Subaru continues to shout, saying that he'd thought Todd was dead, but he won't let him escape this time. He mocks him, saying he'll make him run away ungracefully if he tries to beat him. Flop is understandably confused, but Subaru quietly tells him to shut up. Still acting, he gives Todd the finger and then walks proudly down the alley. He knows it's a bet, but he thinks that Todd isn't the type to act rashly and will be weighing up his best move rather than attacking all out now. Unlike a sin archbishop, Todd isn't acting out of obsession. He's flexible in how he will attack, and Subaru is taking advantage of that willingness to be prepared to try to buy himself some time. He realizes now that he has to make the choice between fighting and running away. If he wants to fight Todd, his best option is to go and hire Rowan. If he wants to flee, he needs to go and get Rem and leave the city, and he needs to take Flop and Medium with him because they won't be safe here. But where can he go? He only knows one place, of course. Having made his decision, he announces to Flop that he's leaving Guaral right now. Next, he runs back to the inn, no longer worried about Todd discovering its location, as they won't be staying there. He enters the room where Rem, Louis and Medium are staying. Medium nearly attacks him with her barbarian sword before realising it's him. Subaru hugs Rem, who is not exactly thrilled about being hugged, but calmly peels herself off of him and asks what's wrong. Subaru says that a bad guy has found them and they need to leave the city. Rem asks Louis to get her luggage. Subaru notices that it's strange that Rem hasn't unpacked. When he asks about this, she remains silent. It's implied that she was thinking about taking Louis and running away, and Subaru knows that this is something they'll need to discuss later when they're not in an emergency. Then there's a funny exchange between Flop and Medium, as Flop tells Medium that they're leaving the city with them, and Medium says that she's already taken her boots off. Flop says she can just put them on again. That's the great thing about shoes, they can be reused. Medium calls him a shoe genius and puts her boots on. They talk about how they need to get to their ox cart, and their ox, whose name is revealed to be Botacliff. Flop says that he's their third sibling, a cute little brother that they can't leave behind, and Medium points out that Botacliff is female, so he corrects it to cute little sister. Together with Subaru carrying Rem in his arms, they run out of the inn without asking for a refund on the nights they'd paid in advance for, and make it to the stables. With everyone loaded into the ox cart, Subaru tells Flop to make Botacliff run with all her might. With some encouragement from Medium, Botacliff bolts out of the stables, and the momentum almost makes Subaru fall out of the cart, so he grabs Rem's hand. But when he comments that her hand is soft, she lets go and he hits his head. Still, he says that if they head down the main street, they can leave through the gate where they entered. But Rem stops him by saying it doesn't look like it will be that easy. He looks to see what she means, and there's a row of guards in armour blocking their path. Subaru says, "So, Todd, you changed your policy and called your friends." Todd isn't among the men he can see, but it makes sense that he's gathered his friends to stop them leaving. It's not Todd, but Jamal, who steps forward to address Subaru, shouting that he will kill him. Subaru is not sure how to get past this, but Medium tells Flop to take the reins and jumps down, and she immediately starts engaging the soldiers with her barbarian sword. Subaru is impressed as she fights them, clearing the path so that the ox cart can get through. Flop says that he is like a child when it comes to fighting, but his sister makes up for his weakness. Medium is fighting well, but soon she finds herself trying to take on Jamal, and she shouts up to Flop that this guy is strong. Subaru is worried about her, as this is the first time he's seen Jamal fight seriously, and he does seem effective. But Flop shouts at Medium to go for it, and she believes in his encouragement and keeps on going. Still, Jamal has managed to cut her in a few places, and she's in visible pain, despite keeping on going. Jamal is now all that's blocking the cart from getting out of the gate. Suddenly, Rem passes Subaru a rope, and he sees her stand and throw a crate from the cart's cargo at Jamal. He splits it open with one of his twin swords, but this was what Rem was hoping for. Spices and powders come out of the crate and shower over him. With Jamal temporarily unable to see, Subaru throws one end of the rope to Medium, and she gets back up onto the cart. Immediately, they aim to get through the main gate and out of the city. But Jamal emerges through the smoke of spices and shouts to them that they won't get away, jumping up to attack, only to be cut down by Medium, falling into the sea of blood from the other defeated soldiers. Rem shouts that this is revenge for what happened at the riverside and throws the backpack Subaru had previously used to carry her off of the cart, hitting Jamal in the face and breaking apart. They break through the main gate and can see the horizon opening up before them. Subaru remarks that they were only in the city for 3 hours. But suddenly, a figure with an axe drops down onto the cart from above the main gate. Nobody else could have reacted to this, but Subaru blocks the strike from the axe with the barbarian sword that Medium dropped onto the cart when she got back onto it, telling Todd that he knew he'd come. Todd pressures Subaru with his axe, and it doesn't seem like Rem or Medium can get there to help, but Louis jumps up and attaches herself to Todd, trying to stop him. He shakes her off and elbows her in the face, telling her not to interfere and making her roll away screaming in pain. But Subaru, who's figured out the situation now, screams out to Kuna and Holy, who he's sure are hiding in wait somewhere, and he tells them to do it. Something rushes towards the cart and knocks Todd off it in a response to Subaru's shout to the Sudrak, saving his life. Subaru falls back, all of his energy gone now. All he can say is that he will punch that bad-natured Emperor when he sees him again. Subaru has realised that Vincent would have known that this would be what would happen, and that Subaru would be returning all along. And that's the end of the chapter. I really love this chapter. There were some really nice moments, as well as obviously a lot of action, and I think Flop and Medium really got a chance to shine. It's good for Subaru to have found some allies that don't seem to be tied to one side of the conflict here, and Medium definitely seems to be a strong fighter. I was a little disappointed that they didn't get Rowan in the party as well before leaving the city. I wonder if he'll appear again or if he was just a one-off bit part character for that one scene. Tappei does have a tendency to keep the number of random characters who never show up again fairly low, so I wouldn't be surprised if we do see Rowan again in the future. I'm hoping we'll be getting more Vincent in Chapter 19, and I'll be back with a summary and review of Arc 7 Chapter 19 when it's out. I'm also working on a big video about Vivi right now, so if you are watching that series, make sure you check that video out when it's done. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.